Welcome back to Hoops HD. This is our Under the Radar podcast. I am your host, Chad Sherwood,
Woohoo!
joined by the puppet David Griggs. Down below me, we got Rocco Miller back with us and John Stalika as well. Welcome, guys, to our show. And this is Under the Radar. And David, do you want to define what it means to be under the radar?
Well, it kind of means like you're not on the radar. You're kind of under it.
This is David Woj. This is our show about the 22 conferences that are historically single bid conferences, more or less.
Yeah. So again, you have your 10 multi-bid leagues. You have the 5 Power 5 conferences, which are the Big 12, SEC, ACC, and Pac-12. And again, power conferences. Again, I want to define that has more to do with legislative power than it does just on the court results, because the Big East certainly on par or better than a lot of those, but they don't have the autonomy that those league has. So it's the 5 autonomy conferences and then 5 other regular multi-bid leagues, and that is the Big East, the A10, although not so much this year, the Mountain West, the West Coast Conference, and the American, although we don't – oh, not the American. But we don't like talking about them either.
That's my opinion of American basketball this year. Yet another team tonight that failed to reach 20 points by halftime, but that is not for this show, thankfully.
Yeah.
And the second qualifier is you cannot be in the top 25. So a team like New Mexico State, they're knocking on the doors in the polls, but they're not quite at that checkpoint yet.
Right.
They may get disqualified at some point here if they can continue to keep winning. But what we like to actually do is start every show off with a feature conference. And tonight we are going to a conference, one of our favorite conferences, a conference that annually places teams in Dayton in the first 4. It's the Southwestern Athletic Conference night. And David, I got that with you because you had a dream that fell apart this past week.
It did, and I am very disappointed. And I got to tell you, I have lost interest in the SWAC. I don't share the fervor for this conference that the rest of the country does now that my dream has ended. Texas Southern had the chance to do something incredible. They lost every single out-of-conference game, and to be fair to them, a lot of teams would have lost every single out-of-conference game playing that type of schedule. But they were, in my opinion, still are, despite having a really bad week, one of the better teams in the league. And I thought, well, what would be more amazing than losing every out-of-conference game, then running the table in conference, including winning the conference tournament?
One statistic that is intact for Texas Southern right now, they are 0-15 away from home, and yet they're 3-0 in their only 3 home games so far.
Yeah, and David, I've got some good news for you. The dream is not totally dead. It's just been relocated from Houston, Texas to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, because Arkansas Pine Bluff went 0-14 against every other Division I opponent that was not a SWAC member, and is currently 5-0 against the SWAC. So we still have a
look. I honestly did not realize that. That is great stuff. The dream lives.
The dream lives with Pine Bluff. We also, though, Rocco, have this Jackson State team now sitting at 6-0 and approaching that mythical 500 overall record, too, and just a game below it.
Yeah, Jackson State actually, they're looking like the real deal. That was a gutty overtime win. I believe it was at Texas Southern last Saturday to snap our original dream. Prairie View had some decent results early on. So from a power rating standpoint, I think Jackson State's actually doing a little bit more damage. But, we've got a couple good stories to take the place of Texas Southern going forward.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to go to Stalika. He just highlighted it there. We every year give out our centenary awards, the worst team in D1, and I believe we have our front runner here. Despite 349 in the RPI, you've highlighted the numbers, including that wonderful 352 when there's only 351 teams in the KPI rating. For Mississippi Valley
something
State
similar
there.
with Alabama A&M last year when they were at the same point. And I think as Lee Del Vecchio had also highlighted in the email thread, the Mississippi Valley men and women are both winless this year, which is not a good time in Itta Bena.
Yeah, Now, a
And to
couple
explain
of
that, I just want to quickly, David, explain that now the 352 rating is in the KPI rating. He gives all non-D1 opponents a rating in his list. That's how you get a 352. So every
right,
non-D1
yeah.
counts as a single team, and they are even better than Mississippi Valley. But go ahead, David.
Yeah. So, well, again, Mississippi Valley, the Centenary Award frontrunner right now, I would think, although there might be another team or two in the MAC. The only team really in the conference left without a Div 1 win, but some good stories here. The league kind of upside down. I don't think we were expecting that much out of Pine Bluff or Jackson State. They've had some good teams in the past, but not recently. And then a lot of your traditional powers or recent successful teams like Southern, Texas Southern struggling a little bit. And how about the middle of this conference, namely Grambling and Alabama A&M? Unfortunately, neither available for the conference tournament or for the NCAA, or are they in the conference tournament?
They are eligible to play in the conference tournament. Should either one of them win it, the team they knock off in the finals gets the bid. So,
yeah,
are eligible for the conference tournament, the SWAC, not the NCAA. So,
yeah, and Grambling having 7 wins this year, and I don't want to sound facetious when I say this. That is significant improvement for that program. They're moving in the right way. They had a really, really big program-defining win, really, against Georgia Tech earlier this year, and they got some legs. And could they turn into a contender here in a couple years if they keep this up?
Yeah, if you look at their week, they got wins not just against Texas Southern, but also Prairie View, which was also one of the better teams they had out of conference.
well, just because Prairie View picked up D1 wins out of conference, one of them,
Yeah.
that made them good.
Yeah.
Look at D1,
Well, they won the middleweight bracket in the MGM Grand event main event.
Yep.
Let's take a look, Rob, at the upcoming schedule in the SWAC for this week. We do see Pine Bluff trying to keep the dream alive with a tough week, though, at Prairie View, at Texas Southern.
Yeah, they're making the trip down to Texas. So, well, hopefully they can at least get the Prairie View win so we can have some good drama between the team that we used to have the dream with the new team with the dream. So that could be intriguing on Monday. Otherwise, Jackson State and Grambling could be a good one on Saturday.
Yep, we got that. We also got the Mississippi Valley has the trip to Prairie View.
Yeah.
And Texas Southern. I guess that makes them a travel partner, I guess, with Pine Bluff there. But let's kind of swing back to the top of the conferences now and start off back off in the America East, David. Let me turn to you in the America East, where Vermont, despite having Anthony Lamb out, is continuing to pick up the wins in conference.
Yeah, they are. And again, 4-0 and 4-0 without Anthony Lamb. This is a really good Vermont team. I think that we had really high expectations for them. I don't think that they were too high, but the fact that they didn't quite meet them. And by the way, our expectations were top 40 national 10-line caliber team. I don't think they're quite that good, but I still think they have a really high ceiling. And I think they run away from this conference, and they're on their home court all the way through the tournament.
Right. And Rocco, we do have a couple other teams here, UMBC, New Hampshire. Do you think anybody can actually catch Vermont, though, or do you think they're going to keep pulling away here?
I don't really see anybody being able to catch Vermont. I mean, Vermont's shown with leadership of Trey Bell Haynes, who is a preseason all-conference player. He was banged up a little bit earlier this year. He actually missed a loss against Northeastern. But last week, I mean, he showed what kind of leader he is. He had 30 points against Binghamton. He went 10 for 10 from the field, about 80% as a whole for the whole week. And then they've got a deep bench. They're playing 5 seniors. They've got they're just a lot deeper than anybody else in the league. So I cannot foresee it. But a special shout out. What just happened?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Like craziness on the.
Well,
special shout out real quick.
Go ahead.
Okay, to Binghamton's win over Albany, it snapped a 14-game losing streak, and I believe that is a rivalry. Maybe you guys out there can shed some light on that.
They're both SUNY schools to the extent. I don't know that there's any real heat to that rivalry. Probably the Albany Siena has a little more heat to it, David, don't you think?
Yeah.
Right. Both of
Real
them.
rare out of conference under the radar rivalry. But yeah, Albany Siena is always fun.
But here's the upcoming schedule as far as Vermont goes. Hopefully, we got the screen back. We had to have some updates there because we hadn't updated some of the numbers before we started the show, so I apologize for that. But Vermont with the road trip to New Hampshire, home game against Albany, so this could be a big week for them if they want to keep running undefeated streak.
Yep, I mean that's some. I mean, this was one of the games we would have been looking forward to last year with Vermont and New Hampshire hooking up. But also look out for the matchup at Hartford, which is another place where they can trip up. But at the same time, can UMass Lowell also get off the schneid against either Albany at Binghamton or Stony Brook at home, because they're going to need to climb at least one spot just to be assured of qualifying for the America East tournament.
Over in the Atlantic Sun, and this is a conference where things got thrown on their completely upside down this past week, as Lipscomb with a horrible past week, losing 2 games, and is now 2 games behind a Gulf Coast Jacksonville tie when we were already locking them into the NCAA tournament, David.
Yeah, in the Jacksonville game, you're kind of and I know that all of us are kind of the same. We got several screens up. We're kind of looking at the scores, and I almost thought that they had the score wrong when I'm scrolling through to figure out what's going on with that one, just because it was so preposterous that it would be that reversed. What I don't know what happened. I don't know. As far as I know, they were at full strength. They weren't missing any of their key players, and they just got absolutely drilled. Really, really piss poor showing in both games.
Yeah. Yeah, Lipscomb's been an up-tempo team all year, and they really got exposed last week in both games, both in Jacksonville. And they gave up 102 and they gave up 87 in those 2 losses. So that made me do some digging before we came on tonight. So you look at their defensive metrics. They're ranked number 305 in defending the 2-pointer. So I mean that's a kind of a classic team that's more worried about pushing the pace than playing defense. And then they're also ranked number 324 in amount of times they're letting teams go to the free throw line. So they've got a lot of defensive issues. They're driven by the player of the year in this conference is Garrison Matthews. He's got outstanding numbers. He's one of the best under the radar players out there. But if you don't start figuring out how to defend the rim, they're going to be in trouble come conference tournament time and might not be a part of the bracket.
Yeah, you've got them right there, and you look at that number there. Their tempo, according to KenPom, is 6th in the nation. Their adjusted offensive rating is 253. They're pushing the ball. They're just not doing a very, very good job of pushing the ball sometimes.
Right. Florida just beat them at their own game last Thursday.
Yeah, and Gulf Coast, who looked really good out of the gate, and by out of the gate I mean that first week of the season, then kind of became disappointing, but off to a really good start. You got to kind of wonder, do they have the highest ceiling now in this conference? And did they always? They just weren't playing up to it. I guess we'll find out this week,
Yeah, tomorrow night they're at Lipscomb. Jacksonville, easier track to try to get to 5 or 6-0 with the games at Upstate, at NJIT, and home against Stetson. So I would not be surprised next week this time if we're talking about Jacksonville being in sole possession of first place, although I'm not certain that that's going to last.
Yeah.
But let's John, let's head over to the Big Sky Conference, where we do have a team that's starting to pull away in the league here, with Montana now 6-0.
Yeah, this was one of the teams I had highlighted in the under the radar game of the day over the weekend, where they ended up getting the win at Portland State, which helped them get a little bit of separation, because prior to that, all Montana had done was just beat everyone that's going to be in the bottom half of the conference. But they also edged out Montana State, who has fallen off a little bit, including a loss to the aforementioned Portland State team.
Yeah, and Rocco, I mean, beyond Montana, this conference is just pretty darn even all the way down until 10th place, though. If Montana does slip up, there is anybody can grab them, I think.
I agree. Yeah, and I mean, this is another one of those leagues with a bunch of tough road trips, which really impressed me that Montana could win both those games. I know Sacramento State's got an awful record, but since Big Sky play started, they won a couple home games we didn't expect them to. I know they beat Portland State, and I think the other one might have been Northern Colorado, or maybe it was Eastern. But yeah, so these road games are not easy to win, and Montana found a way to get a sweep, and that's one of the tougher trips to do Sacramento than Portland. And now they go to Montana State, and if if they can get that one, and you look at their schedule, they got a nice cushion for 2 home games against 2 of the bottom teams in the league to get to 9-0. So they're sitting pretty to get into the number 1 spot right now. But yeah, you're right, Idaho. I got a special nugget for you, Chad. Chad Sherwood leads the Big Sky at 51% 3-point shooting. So keep it up, Chad.
Good
All right,
job.
down.
Wow.
David, the Big South Conference. We've got there it is. Radford now with a 1-game lead over Asheville and Gardner-Webb. Liberty's fallen back to 3-3.
Well, yeah, and that was kind of predictable. Liberty got off to the good start, but I don't think they had to lift as much weight as they've had to since then. I like this Radford team. I think I like them more than anyone else in the conference. It's certainly not surprising to see them jump out ahead. We'll see if they can take it. Big week coming up, really. I mean, I know that they're coming off a loss to Gardner-Webb, but
Well, Stalika, the big week that we had this past week in the Big South, how about that Longwood team that was an early Centenary Award contender during non-conference play, wins at Liberty, follows it up with a home win over Campbell, a nice 2-0 week for Longwood, and suddenly 3-3 in conference.
Well, you're not going to win the Centenary for winning at a team like Liberty, who is one of the contenders going into Big South play, and even beating Campbell, which was pretty respectable. But as the Puppet had touched on earlier, Gardner-Webb's win against Radford keeps the Highlanders from running away from this conference at this point.
Right. Now,
and are you surprised?
Yeah,
here we are.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
David.
Well, here we are. I mean, we're already 6 games into the season. We're only 6 games in, and only in 2 games separate the top 8 teams, and this is a much wider margin than what we're used to seeing in this conference.
This conference is always tight. Circle this game tomorrow night. The red-hot Longwood Lancers giving up for dead at one point at Radford. They pull off that one. We could be talking about them as a contender in the conference as opposed to a contender for last place where we were a month ago.
Which also means it's going to be above the usual game of Asheville and Winthrop that would in years past be deciding who would be 1-2 in this league.
Mm-hmm. And Rocco, over in the Big West, we are recording this here Wednesday night around 10 o'clock Eastern, so a couple big games are about to tip tonight in this league. But in terms of where we are heading into tonight's play, suddenly Cal State Fullerton at 4-0 with their game at Santa Barbara tonight, and Santa Barbara at 1-2, a little backwards here.
Right, yeah. So Fullerton is, they're going for history. They're 4-0 for the first time in the Big West since '84. If they can win the 2 road games this week, which will definitely be a tough challenge when they go to Santa Barbara tonight and Long Beach later this week, they'd be 6-0 for the first time in history. But the challenge is in front of them. Santa Barbara, of course, highly affected with the mudslides last week. The highway is still closed, so they actually have 2 home games this week, and they're requiring both Irvine and Fullerton to go an alternate route, which makes the bus ride about 2 hours longer. Some additional challenges with those road games besides the fact that UCSB is a capable and contending team here in the Big West.
Yeah, and how again, and as inconvenient as that is, I mean, how tragic.
Yeah.
I think even Hawaii had to deal with was it the false alarm over the supposed missiles, but that was not on the same level as Santa Barbara, but certainly had to shake up their players, and also the UCSB team that was also in town. Never would have expected to hear that.
I'm sure the boss wanted to see someone in their office after that little mishap out in Hawaii. Anyway.
Hawaii, though, a team that we kind of liked heading this season, was a little disappointing, but now off to a 3-1 start hosting UC Davis. They could pull. They really sort of look a lot better here too, David, especially with Santa Barbara's struggles.
I like Hawaii. I think they're good, but I still can't. I don't think that they can win on the mainland as much as they need to in order to finish on top of this league.
All right. Well, let's John, let's jump right over to the Colonial, where we started talking about them last week. They're still up there in first place, Bill and Mary, although we suddenly have a
boy.
huge logjam, probably 7 teams deep in this league.
Yep, and Towson and College Charleston appropriately are going to be right in the middle. And I'll admit this was the first week I think I finally put William and Mary in my top 10, although Towson did get a win at Mary to at least stay within striking distance.
Yeah, so I made it a point to watch that game. I'd only sort of been passively following William and Mary, but as they were emerging, it's like, well, this is one that I had circled. And I wanted to dig my eyes out with a spoon. Just a horrid showing at home by Bill and Mary.
Yeah, Chad, I know you were gone for a lot of the weekend, unfortunately, but you missed a hell of a week in this league. So an easy way to start this off would be to talk about James Madison. They had a 9-point lead against William and Mary with 45 seconds to go. Somehow William and Mary hits a bunch of threes, JMU misses free throws, and William and Mary wins that in overtime. Otherwise, they would have lost both games last week. Then James Madison plays Delaware and blows an 8-point lead with less than a minute left. Unbelievable the way that the Dukes are finding ways to lose. Then you also had UNC Wilmington played 2 overtime games. They won one and they lost one. And Hofstra was the team of the week. Hit a buzzer beater to win at Towson, and that ended a 14-game home winning streak for Towson. And they also kept the momentum going by winning at Drexel. So it was a wild week in the CAA.
Yep, that's not the first buzzer beater that Hofstra's had, because they also beat Monmouth with a closing seconds 3 as well.
Right. Well, if that week was that crazy, coming up next week, here's our schedule, hopefully. And you're starting to look at, David, you look at all these games and what's not a good game, to the way that these teams are starting to even up in this league.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really fun league to watch, and we thought it would be, but for the reasons we thought it would be fun, have not played out. But, William and Mary, their whole story, they got Northeastern coming in, who's been playing well after really being kind of disappointing out of conference. But, yeah, Drexel and Towson, I could live without that one. I like half those teams. Drexel changed Madison. All right, there you go. You asked for a game. There's one.
Drexel James Madison, not worth watching that one.
Unless James Madison has a big lead at the end, then you might want to turn it on.
Yeah.
Rocco, tomorrow night we are going to be recording a bracket rundown show. I'm not certain if you're going to be able to join us or not, but I think that when we do our show tomorrow night, there may be a case to be made for 2 teams in the field out of Conference USA. Are you going to join me on that crusade?
I am.
Oh,
I mean, I think what Western Kentucky was able to do last week, it was pretty sensational. I mean, they beat Marshall and Old Dominion both on the road. If you look at both of their home records, they were both a combined 15-0 at home. The first home loss for both teams. That's no small feat to pull that off, and the travel that's included in that. So in Western Kentucky's resume is the best out of any under-the-radar team. I don't think there's any doubt about that, with the wins from the Bahamas. I think when we get to a point where you have enough quality wins, you can ignore a couple of those losses. Obviously, one of those very controversial at Wisconsin. So I like where Western Kentucky's profile is heading. You just got to continue to hope that they don't have any slip-ups. And I do think for them to get the 2 bids, it's going to have to be somebody else winning the conference tournament. I just don't think Middle Tennessee has the win.
I was really soured last year when Middle Tennessee came up on the 12 line. I thought that they were, with the exception of maybe one team in Wichita State, better than everyone else that was inside the bubble but not wearing white. So 9, 10, 11 line, I was like, I know that on paper they don't have the big wins of the top 50 wins, but on the court they would beat all these teams.
Right.
And I just think that they were looking at things way too superficially. They didn't realize that last year Middle Tennessee had 5 or 6 wins against teams that lost 2 or fewer games at home, and you kind of got to wonder, those were really good wins, as Rocco pointed out, both of them. at Marshall and at Old Dominion. Is the committee going to sit up and take notice of that? When Greg Shaheen was running things, I think they did. Since he's been gone, I don't think they look at things quite that deeply anymore. Just my opinion. But in the win against Purdue, I mean, Western Kentucky's really good.
Yeah, and I think if Chad, if you can pull up the team sheet for Western Kentucky, I think you can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it on the screen. Sorry, I wasn't looking. So you can see that the wins at Old Dominion and the win at Marshall. They need that Marshall win to get in the top 135, so it's at least a Category 2. But I think with 3 or 4 Category 2s and Purdue's clearly going to stay in Category 1 on a neutral basis. I think they've got enough there unless they pile up 2 or 3 more crummy losses. Maybe only 1 is all it takes. But right now, I think compared to the rest of the bubble, they're okay.
And even the win against Wright State is looking far more significant for the Toppers.
Yeah.
Yes.
But David, here's what I got. Middle Tennessee, who's also on the screen on the right-hand side here. They've got no Category 1s, only 1 Category 2 wins, but they've got a lot of wins in Category 3 that I think are going to move up to 2s, like Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Gulf Coast possibly. And then the other thing is, look at this in the records up here. 7-0 in true road games.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unbelievably impressive.
It is.
That's awesome.
No.
But let's take a look at next week in Conference USA because it has a pretty darn big game coming up here on Saturday. David, Middle Tennessee at Western Kentucky.
Yeah, and again, not and no small games until that Middle Tennessee going to Marshall. That's going to be good. UAB going to Western Kentucky, although UAB kind of been a disappointment. They've got some talent, but Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky tournament implications. I don't know what the under the radar game will be that day, but we'll be highlighting that one way or another. That's a hugely important game between 2 teams that are honestly fringe top 40, if not both top 40. They're good.
And even Old Dominion has the Florida road trip with FIU and FAU, which is actually a little bit more of a challenge than we had anticipated at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
All right. Well, but John, let's take a look. Let's take a look over at the Horizon League, where we continue to be shocked here by what Wright State is doing, and just continuing to win games, including the huge win last week at Northern Kentucky.
But on one layer, I'm not sure if I'm terribly surprised because let's not forget, Northern Kentucky actually beat Wright State 3 times last year, which is pretty difficult to do, and these were all close games. So in one respect, Wright State, you could argue that they were overdue, and then Oakland also gets back on track with wins against Cleveland State and also at Illinois, Chicago. So they're 4-3, not too far off the beaten path, but another emerging surprise, also IUPUI, which got a couple wins because we certainly weren't expecting them to be tied with Oakland at this stage of the season.
Yeah, and whereas Oakland and Northern Kentucky have been really disappointing, although Branson, I still love him at NKU. How about the job Scott Nagy's done at Wright State? He was phenomenal at South Dakota State, I think it was, and you wondered why he would make a change like that. Not that Wright State isn't a solid program, but it was just an odd move. You would think that if he were going to move, he would move up to maybe a school that isn't under the radar. But in year 2, he's really got them going. It's been a while since the Raiders have been this good.
Right, and there's the upcoming schedule on the screen. So, go ahead, Rocco.
Yeah,
I was just going to mention that Wright State, if you look at the standings, it looks like they're only up by a game, but they've really got a huge edge in this league now because they've got the road wins at both NKU and Oakland.
Yeah.
So the 3-game lead over Oakland is almost acting as a 4-game lead because of that advantage on the road. They're getting a lot of great play from Grant Benzinger. He was the player of the week last week. He's also from Salika's hometown of Cincinnati, and I know he really took it to NKU on Friday night when he had 32 points. So they've got the player, they've got good coaching, and this league's not very deep. So they've just got to hold clear from here.
And also the son of former Cincinnati Red Todd Benzinger, so certainly familiar with the name.
Oh, yeah.
Well, David, as we love to say, should Wright State win this conference, they'll get the huge reward of getting to play the conference in Detroit.
Yeah, this league completely screwed up everything when they took their tournament off campus. And again, I know we say it a lot, and I'll go ahead and say it again, but in the years of doing Under the Radar, it was such a fun storyline because who's going to get home court advantage, who's going to have that advantage, and then watching the games in the tournament, the atmospheres were fantastic. And then to see what happened last year with dozens of people at the championship game.
The 10 seed in the game.
Yeah.
Rocco, the Ivy League, still fairly early in Ivy League play. A few teams have only played one game so far even. But Penn, I think, is looking like the best team just overall even.
Yeah, this is their first 3-0 start in 5 years, and they haven't let down at all since non-conference. So good start for them to get the sweep over Cornell and Columbia. Princeton did it too, and I think Princeton's now got a home win streak of 21. But yeah, pretty light week overall. Not much happening, and I think Yale and Brown get a rematch this week. It's kind of odd as well.
Brown, Harvard, Dartmouth round 2, Cornell, Columbia round 2 as well this week, or actually round 1, I think, on one of those. But non-conference game, Temple at Penn, a huge Big 5 game. We discussed this during our Hoops HD report last night as well. Those are the games this week. I believe come next week we do get into the full regular Ivy League schedule finally.
Correct.
David, in Metro Atlantic here, Iona and Canisius still there. Sleek actually told like this Iona team last week, and are you starting to join him in liking this team?
Yeah, I am. I mean, how can you not? They keep playing, they keep winning. Real nice win at Siena last week. And again, I mean, not that Siena's good, but they weren't the most impressive out of conference, but they've looked good so far.
Well, I was looking more at their 91-64 win over Rider there, Rocco, because Rider, I think, was the most impressive non-conference.
Yeah, according to the power ratings, Iona and Rider were neck and neck for the top power ranking spot. Again, that's all based on possession play and so forth. But Iona beating them by 27 was very surprising. I had that game circled as a game to keep track of all day, and it wasn't much of a game. So good win for Iona. And Canisius, is still sitting with that little edge because they beat Iona and they're tied at the top. But this week we get to see what Canisius is made of. They're going to head to Manhattan, who's one game behind, and then they play at Iona. I believe that's on Monday.
And Iona's had most of their games at home so far in league play. They do go on the road for Monmouth, which probably not going to be as heated as it's been the past couple years, but no rest for the weary when they're hosting Canisius the following Sunday.
Right, Sunday.
And,
there we go.
Yeah, John, let me stick with you here. The Mid-American Conference, where Buffalo now up to a 5-0 started, and I'm getting very impressed by this team. I don't know if you're with me or not.
Well, they certainly held serve in steamrolling Miami and also Northern Illinois. Ball State, on the other hand, losing against Western Michigan, but rebounding with the win against Central Michigan. That'll keep them a couple games behind, but also keep an eye on Toledo, which blasted OU in the Convo Center last night.
Yeah. Yeah, but Toledo's on fire. They won 7 out of 8. Unfortunately, that one loss was against Buffalo, and they only played them one time, much like Ball State. So Buffalo is sitting pretty. They will not face Toledo or Ball State the rest of the season, regular season. And their main contest that I have circled is the one coming up that just got moved to Friday, actually, against Western Michigan. They've moved that up to be on TV, so that's pretty cool for the under-the-radar fans like us. And then they'll get them again on a return trip later in February. I think really it's Buffalo and Toledo right now, but I got to see Ball State in person last week, and they've got some weapons. They beat Notre Dame. So there's only I'm only really seeing about 3 or 4 teams in this league that could cut down the nets in Cleveland.
I would agree, and if it holds serve till the semifinals and those 3 or 4 teams are in it, that it's going to be a fun tournament. This typically is a really fun tournament. So, I don't know, like great rivalries in this conference. Just a great league, and it's kind of fun to see. Although Buffalo's been up there, we haven't seen Ball State in this situation pretty much in the last couple decades, I guess it is. So it's
Right.
kind of nice to see them in the mix. Yeah.
Yeah.
David, I pulled up Buffalo's team sheet here just because that RPI of 29 is such a good number, but it's not there for an at-large bid, is it? Despite that number,
I would have to say 2 years ago I would have said yes, because outright first place finishers who were top 40 RPI teams seem to always go in. But the last couple of years, I think the committee's been less impressed with bloated records and bloated RPIs than they were, even if you're a first place team, than they were before. It used to be, it seemed like if you were a first place finisher and you were in the top 40 of the RPI, you were in, no matter what league you were in. I just don't know if that's the case anymore. But how can you not? At least they're going to be in the debate, I would think.
right?
I don't know. Rocco's better at guessing the committee than the rest of us probably, but yeah.
Yeah, David, that's a good analysis. I pretty much second what you're saying. I just think the way that they're picking teams in these especially in the last few spots, it's coming down to who beat the majority of the tournament teams or teams that are RPI top 75, and Buffalo's got no way to prove that now. They have no bad losses, which is great, but there's no way for them to get themselves back in.
Right.
From that large standpoint.
Rocco, the MEAC, I think the only conference left in the nation with 3 teams that are undefeated in it, here with NC Central, Bethune-Cookman, and North Carolina A&T. I don't know what else to say about the league, though.
Yeah. How about A&T getting a nice win over Morgan State? I mean, that was that was kind of a litmus test for me to see if they were any good, and then they won it. So they're continuing to charge forward, and I guess from a rating standpoint, NC Central is starting to stand out as maybe the top team, but yeah, I think we all agree that this thing is coming down to the end, and there's probably about 5 or 6 that can do it.
Here's the upcoming schedule as well. Just a quick side note here: that Norfolk State at North Carolina A&T game that's on the list there, I was reading tomorrow night, was just moved back. I believe that game is going to be played sometime next week now instead. Although I think we got to confirm that. But I guess one other thing of note here, David, is if we started this show by discussing the SWAC and Mississippi Valley State. Here's another contender for our centenary award in Delaware State at 0-18 against D1, and some 350s and 3-1s down there across the board.
Yeah. Certainly there, and you got to be impressed by that. I mean, there's all that, some real competition going on there for the centenary.
Missouri Valley Conference, we have a huge logjam. 6 teams within one game of the lost standings of the first place. I do not believe that those numbers include tonight's wins, which included Missouri State coming back from down big to knock off Valpo.
Chad, I'm starting to really like Loyola Chicago now that they got Custer back. They're starting to get back in their groove like we saw in early December and late November. I think they've got the goods to get the League One. Missouri State's got the best player, Alize Johnson, but they just seem to I don't know. I'm getting a really bad vibe from them. I've been in contact with some of the guys that cover the team, and there's still some turmoil with the coach where he's on the hot seat. I just think they're up against too much pressure for that community they're in Springfield, and Drake's a great story, but I just don't think they have to stay at the top.
Right.
Yeah. Another final score. Loyola Chicago did win that game tonight as well against Southern Illinois. But I guess kind of circle that game there Saturday, Missouri State at Drake. And then Wednesday next week, Loyola Chicago at Drake. So if Drake is for real, this is the week to find out about it.
It's the week.
I don't think they are. I think we will find out that they're not. But again, exciting to get both those teams at home. It's been a minute since Drake's had anything to be excited about. Minus, what year was it? Was it 07, 08, where they were in the rankings, and I forget when it was. But it's been a while since Drake. Yeah.
They won a first round game, I believe, and then
Western Kentucky put them. They were a 5 seed.
Right. That's what it was.
Yeah.
They were a 5 seed. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is also the week to see if Northern Illinois comes out of their hibernation, because they also got wins against Valpo and Drake, and now they're going to have a game at Southern Illinois coming up, along with a home game against Illinois State. So this could get even more of a log jam.
Yeah.
That'd be Northern Iowa, though, not Northern Illinois. Sleek, I know that you're kind of wrapped right now watching your Xavier Musketeers trying to lose at home to St. John's. But
that's above the radar, not under.
Yeah. Right.
Well, they'll be playing back under the radar, and take a quick look at the Northeast Conference, another conference with a bit of a lot.
Bobby Moe? Yeah.
Robert Morris, yes, and they got a big win. I believe it was on the road at St. Francis, PA, and maybe I'm. Oh, they lost to them. Okay,
they lost to them.
They lost to them.
Dickinson.
Right. St. Francis, PA got beat at home by Mount St. Mary's. That's what I was thinking of. So, I didn't think Robert Morris would be in the top of the league. I think they lost 4, maybe 5, I think, of their starters last year to transfer. So, somehow they put a roster together that's starting to click. This is a wild league that we love.
It is. And how about, and again, you got 4 teams separated by just 1 game. And unlike what the Horizon League is now, it's what the Horizon League used to be, home court advantage on the line. And how much fun is this? Like, we're 6 games in, it's an 18-game format. And 4 teams are separated by just 1 game, and all these rivalries, all these Northeastern kids and attitudes, and it's all streamed in high def, and it's just all great.
Yeah, and there's the upcoming schedule for the week. And if you want to know which game is the good game you should watch, the answer is all of them.
All of them, yeah.
Especially Robert Morris at Wagner on Saturday.
Yeah, Robert Morris at Wagner. Yeah.
Actually, a big week for Wagner with that game and SFPA both at home this week. So you can kind of circle Wagner this week in the Northeast. Talking about big games, though, here's last week's schedule in the Ohio Valley Conference, but I'm going to quickly go right past that to this coming week's schedule. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, David, Murray State at Belmont.
Yeah, 2 of the 3 thoroughbreds going at it. I still think Jack State, despite being now a game behind, is still right up there. The thing I cannot comprehend is that we're 6 games in, and Austin Peay is in a 3-way tied for first place. But Murray State Belmont, I think, the class of the league.
I was going to say, Rocco, if Austin Peay can win that game at Tennessee State tomorrow night, they'll be in a 2-way tie for first place now.
Yeah.
Right. No guarantees with Austin Peay because they don't have very much depth, but they do have 1 great player, and he's actually a transfer from Grambling. Can you imagine if Grambling still had him? Avril Ugba, he had a huge week. He had 35 points in the upset win at Jacksonville State, which nobody saw coming last week, especially coming after Jacksonville State beat Murray State. He had the most field goals made in the game with 17 out of any Division I player this year. So heck of a week for Ugba, and it'd be cool to see Austin Peay stay hot and towards the top of the standings with such a decimated roster besides him.
Yeah.
Right. Let's jump right over to the Patriot League, and there were a bunch of games tonight in the Patriot League. It was a really fun night of games early this evening in the Patriot League. A lot of close ones. And we did see Bucknell is those finally, now that they got into conference play, David, they're finally trying to turn into the team that I think we expected all season.
Yeah, they're starting to look at a little more. Again, 6-1 now. Their 1 loss to Boston U at home was just a train wreck, and I had kind of given up on them. Since me giving up on them, they've started to play pretty well. Maybe I should have given up on them before the season started.
But I think there was also one other game under the radar tonight that was Navy and Lafayette. I think Navy had led by as much as, was it 25 or 27, but
I missed that.
Lafayette had quickly whittled that down, but ended up losing by a respectable 3 at home.
3 points
I missed that.
on a 3-pointer at the buzzer to win the game by Navy. I was watching that game after Lafayette, with about 2 seconds left, hit a 3 to tie it. So it was a real exciting finish in that game, in fact. But Navy did pull out the win. Rocco, here's the upcoming schedule here, where we see Bucknell this week is going to be hosting Holy Cross, and then an interesting road test next week at Navy.
Yeah, I think the game at Navy is one to circle for the week. I can't see them really struggling with Holy Cross as bad as Bucknell has been. I also, no matter how hard I try, I still can't find anybody else that's a legit contender. We had Boston U won at Bucknell, and then they turned around and lost to a terrible American team tonight. So, but Bucknell at Navy, we'll see if that's a good game. But
I think I'm going to be doing I'm going to be doing push-ups because I mentioned Navy, but we did not mention the Army-Navy game where Army actually went into Navy's house on Sunday and got the win.
Yeah.
You can do 65 push-ups since that's how many they scored.
Right. We'll be doing that off camera.
David, a league that's looking, it's going to be a ton of fun the rest of the way here. The SoCon with 4 teams, maybe even 5 that are right up there.
Yeah, and how about the top 4 all of a sudden? East Tennessee State, I know Wofford has the big win at North Carolina, and you can't discard that. But East Tennessee State, Furman, both looking really good, and Greensboro as well. So, and Samford trying to rebound a little bit. They really, really let us down out of conference, but here they are at 3-2, maybe kind of getting in step a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see if they can play their way up the standings. But Wofford got the real nice win at Furman this week. I like what they're doing. Oh God, I missed that. Okay, never mind about Samford. Is that score right? Wow.
Yeah, Samford suffered a bad loss to Mercer this week.
Okay. We got to go back and edit that, Chad. You can do that, right?
But a huge game coming tomorrow night, though, Rocco. East Tennessee State.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I've really been high on this Furman team since last year. Of course, Nico Medved left, but he didn't leave the cupboard bare. Furman's got a really solid squad. East Tennessee State, look at what they're doing in the KenPom ratings. They've cracked the top 60. So this is a pretty good collision. Wofford is doing their best to make sure that we don't forget about them. They had a great win against Furman. This upcoming week, they go to Samford, but I think they should be okay there as long as they're hitting shots. Fun league overall.
Yeah.
But the way the schedule is set up, I think Greensboro also has an excellent shot to get into a tie for first because they have Citadel, Mercer, and also Furman at home in a 3-game stretch.
Whenever you have Citadel anywhere, you're in good shape to stay where you're at in the rankings. But but this is a big one tomorrow, and it could be the first of 3 big wins between East Tennessee State and Furman.
Exactly. David makes a good point. I mean, anytime anybody in this league plays Citadel or VMI, it's a bye week.
Yeah. And that's probably, didn't we vote that during rivalry week, the biggest rivalry in the conference? And I think that it is, but they're the 2 worst teams.
Chattanooga, unfortunately, this week this year, kind of in that boat too. But not on the screen there, Sleek. I know you were watching the game tonight, but after being down big in the first half, SFA did come back and get that win at Abilene Christian tonight. So they are among the huge logjam of teams with only 1 loss at the top of the standings here in the South.
Yeah, but that was one of the teams, and then the other team, Southeastern Louisiana, they finally did slip up at home against McNeese State, which was a little bit of a surprise considering how they've started.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened in that game.
Yeah, they did bounce back tonight. They picked up a win over Houston Baptist. It's not on the screen. New Orleans, who had only 1 loss, got blown out at home by Central Arkansas tonight. So a couple other scores that did not make the screen there, just to update. But you do still have 4 teams that'll be tied with 1 loss after that. New Orleans falling off. Nicholls State, surprisingly 6-1, Rocco. Where'd they come from?
I don't know.
That's where they came from.
Yeah.
I think they're from Nataloches, Louisiana. I probably got that wrong, but
Maybe that's it.
but yeah, the Colonels are looking good, and I don't think they've gotten any of those wins against the top half, but they've beaten up on that bottom half. So
Yeah.
good for them. Next week it looks like they got Lamar, and that'll be a tough game. So
It seems like every year in this conference, a team from the basement emerges. Whether it's Houston Baptist, the one year I think they started off 7-0 or 8-0 or 8 whatever it was, and then last year it was New Orleans, and then here's Nicholls State. All of a sudden, like you're just looking at it 6-7 games in, and there's a team up there that you just never thought would be.
Well, congrats to the Colonels. I guess let's move on right over to the Summit League, where David, the South Dakota State team still continuing to impress, picking wins over Denver and Oral Roberts. Not notable wins, but just keep winning games.
Yeah, they just keep winning, and I think they're going to keep winning. There's some other decent teams in this league, and by some other, I mean one in South Dakota. But I don't think anybody else is on their level. They might. I don't know if they're going to run the table. That's a hard declaration to make, but I think they're going to run away from the rest of the league. And having the conference tournament in South Dakota is going to help them as well.
Oh, yeah.
Or they could run away from the league like South Dakota did last year and then slip up to their rival.
But I think as we saw last year, South Dakota State brought more of a fan base to the tournament than South Dakota did.
Yeah. Oh, what a fun game to watch. And then I hated that for South Dakota because I don't think they'd ever been to the NCAA. They were jacked, and it was that was one of the funnest games all of championship week, really.
That was.
Yeah.
There were some real wild games in that. I remember Western Illinois in overtime as the 8th seed. I think that was against South Dakota.
Right.
Lucky to survive that night. That's a fun tournament. I agree with you guys on South Dakota State. It's an interesting dynamic because it's not too often, especially in today's day and age, where you see a guy it's basically a one-man team and everybody that surrounds him is in favor of it. They do everything they can to get him open. They set screens off the ball. Mike Daum, of course, I'm talking about, and everybody's bought in, and he's got the right attitude. He's not one of these ego guys. So, they all take care of each other. It's a really good family atmosphere out there, South Dakota State. So it's just one of those stories you want to see come to fruition into the tournament.
Right. And a huge game coming up next Wednesday night. They're at South Dakota.
Yeah.
Probably the toughest road test. Although, Salika is going to be watching East Texas Baptist at Oral Roberts, but that's just because.
But I think Oral Roberts had a New Year's resolution not to play Toccoa Falls.
Yeah.
Sleek, let me stick with you in the Sun Belt. Another team that's continuing to roll here is this Louisiana team picking up a win this past week over Louisiana Pro.
Yeah, and that would be one of their travel partner games. And Georgia State and Georgia Southern also both holding serve on the road with road wins as part of the App State and Coastal Carolina roadie.
Yeah. And Rocco, let me throw another "where'd they come from" at you. Texas State now 5-1 in this conference.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that. Texas State last year, they made a kind of a Cinderella run to the final before losing to Troy. They were both Cinderellas. I believe it was the 4 seed versus the 6 seed.
Yeah.
And I think they lost 3 or 4 starters off that team. Danny Casper is the coach at Texas State. You guys probably remember him at Stephen F. Austin back before Brad Underwood was the Stephen F. Austin coach. So he's got a lot of coaching experience. Not as thrown off by them as I was Nicholls State. But
okay.
there's a couple strange things happening when Texas Arlington goes on the road and just completely doesn't show up in this league. And then the tweets that like Eric Neal throws out, I don't know if you guys follow him, the point guard. It's almost like they didn't care. These guys are like saving it up for the conference tournament. It's a really weird dynamic now that they know they're not going to be in at large. And then the other strange story I think is Louisiana. They're 5-0. But I read a stat today. I was wondering if maybe you could throw up the team sheet. I'm not sure if it was a KenPom rating or RPI, but I heard that they've only beaten 2 teams in the top 200.
It's not the RPI.
Not the RPI.
No, it is, it is the RPI. Yes, it is the RPI.
Well,
they've got – there is 4 there.
Oh, and one of them's Iowa. Oh, Lord, what a horrendous resume they've got.
Especially if you saw Iowa tonight.
Oh,
Yeah.
Iowa's bad.
I've redone the team sheet here by Ken Palm rating instead of RPI, and yes, you are correct. By Ken Palm ratings, only two top 200 wins at La Tech and
Wow.
versus Iowa.
No, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, really hard to tell, how good Louisiana is, even though they've had it, they proved it on a couple sample sizes, but they haven't hit the tough part of their schedule.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
Rocco, this week they got their next two top 200 Ken Palm teams at Arlington and at Texas State. Maybe we'll know a little bit more about them.
Excellent. We need that.
David, the Western Athletic Conference.
boy.
Again, the kind of being here, keep rolling. And New Mexico State, huge win last week at Grand Canyon, followed up with a win at Bakersfield, now 3-0 in league. And their two toughest road trips out of them.
Yeah, I mean, two of the three toughest road trips. But, and they kind of ran away from Grand Canyon. They didn't blow it open, but they really weren't sweating it out down the stretch. And this is a New Mexico State team. They beat Miami on a neutral floor. They lost at St. Mary's. I don't remember who their other losses are off the top of my head, but they're not bad at all. This team is absolutely for real, in my opinion. They're climbing the polls, as you can see there. They're into the low to mid 30s. They're probably going to get into the rankings before the end of the year, simply because I don't think anybody's going to beat them the rest of the way.
But I think the other surprise here is going to be UT Rio Grande Valley, who also won at Bakersfield, but also got Grand Canyon in a bad mood, so they ended up losing that one against the Lopes.
I'm glad you brought them up. Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I'm glad Stalika brought them up because they've got one of my all-time favorite Seattle Sonics' son on UT Grand Valley, and that would be Xavier McDaniel Jr. Anyway, it'd be cool if they made a run.
A big game coming up this weekend. It's the home game in the Utah Valley, New Mexico State rivalry there. But that game is coming up. And Sleeka, I know you'll be watching the William twins on Tuesday night as Jessup and Jewel go to Grand Canyon and UMKC.
Yeah,
I believe that would be the former Missouri Rolla. That's going to be William Jewell College here.
Very quickly, our team of the people, Cal Baptist, a nice 2-0 wins against a pair of twins as well, Zusta and Hawaii Pacific twins there.
But the bad news for Cal, the bad news is because voters weren't factoring in the loss at Dixie State, they were actually knocked out of the top 25 rankings in D2.
It just goes to show you that the voters don't know anything. They're not watching the games, and they're screwing over. I mean, they're voting against the people. I don't understand why anybody would do that.
Rocco, do you have a scouting report for us for Saturday's game against Concordia?
Is that the Concordia in Oregon?
Yeah,
I have no idea. I thought the Concorde was this plane, but I thought it was out of
it is. Now. It's this plane that used to fly. You could get to London in about 2.5 hours.
I heard they don't have a very good defense, so hopefully Cal Baptist puts up 100.
Top 10 list time. We'll start that off with a little drum roll, maybe even.
That would actually be in Irvine. I'm sorry.
The number one top 10 in our top 10 list should not be any surprise. We just talked about New Mexico State.
Yeah. Well deserved, I think.
And we had a two-way tie for second place. It shouldn't be a surprise who these two teams were either. Both out of Conference USA, Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky.
I'm a little surprised. Well, they'll break the tie on Saturday. So
they will break the tie.
Have we ever had two number 2 teams playing?
I don't know. That's a good reason to be under the radar game of the day. Quickly through the rest of the top 10 here. Coming in at number 4 was Buffalo. We were talking about that great RPI they've got right now. At number 5, Louisiana, another team we just discussed. Number 6, Vermont, still hanging in there.
That's kind of high. I voted for them, but that's higher than I thought they would be. I like them.
South Dakota State, team that's undefeated in the Summit League at 7. Number 8, East Tennessee State coming in there. The team that's currently leading the SoCon. I don't know that they're going to be able to hold up because I think that conference has so much parity in it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
9, Stephen F. Austin.
Little surprised they're that
and,
low. Huh.
And
Loyola,
at
Chicago.
10, that Chicago. A few of the teams that did receive votes or honorable mentions, Wright State, Belmont, Murray State, and William & Mary. But on that note, let me go to each of you for any final thoughts on the night here. And Slika, let me start with you.
I'm just going to go back to the MEAC for a moment because I also want to throw in an additional historical footnote as it relates to Bethune-Cookman. I believe in their brief history in the MEAC, they have one other regular season title, but have yet to go to the big dance. But this is also a school that can claim John Chaney as an alumnus.
Hey, Rocco.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot tonight, so I feel pretty fulfilled. But a final thought would be, kudos to Andre Walker of the Loyola Greyhounds in the Patriot League. He had a game for the record books on Saturday when he put up 43 points against Lafayette, and it proved a little bit that it wasn't a fluke night when he put up 21 in a losing effort.
David, any thoughts? Yeah.
A lot of thoughts. I mean, as exciting as the Horizon League is and as fun as the SoCon's going to be, I really wish they would format their tournaments to at least do something to protect the first place team. I think it's better for the regular season. I think it's better for the conference, especially if you're looking at campus sites. You get a better atmosphere, and it's better in one sense, and it's better for the conference because you want your best team in the tournament. You want the team with the best chance of competing and winning a game. And secondly, I just thought that I would announce tonight, I'm excited about this, that I will be on the selection committee this year. I plan on letting the NCAA know by the end of the week that I will be joining their committee.
All right. Well, as soon as that becomes official, check out the website up there. We have the list of the selection committee members for the year. You should be seeing David Grigg showing up on there because we always believe everything you say, David.
Well, what do you foresee any problems with this? I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think I should have done this years ago.
Appointed yourself to the selection committee. Good job, David.
Okay,
on that note, on behalf of John Slika, David Griggs, Rocco Miller, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again real soon. I think we're doing a bracket rundown show tomorrow night, in fact.
We are.